Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, almost afternoon. I'm Kimberly Collins, the director of the Leonard Transportation Center. It's great to see you all here. We're trying something new, going out and doing destination dialogues. We've had them lately at Omnitrans, but now we're thinking of going out on the road and showing folks a lot of the different transportation realities that exist within the Inland Empire, giving people a taste of how transportation is developing and moving forward within our communities. So I think we have a really great program today. We're going to have a welcome remarks, and then we will have our speakers on a tour. We're going to look at the hydrogen facilities, and I believe we're going to ride a hydrogen bus. So first, I'd like to welcome up Josh.
Welcome everyone. So my name is Josh Lennis. I'm the fund manager at Federal Transit. This is our Pomona operating facility. We have two facilities. Our other facilities in the cities of Arcadia, Urbandale. It's actually split right down the middle.
Lauren unfortunately couldn't be here today, so we have a saying that blessed are the flexible. So I'm filling in. I've actually been part of the advisory council since some of the earlier dialogue series in 2018. So happy to welcome everybody to our Pomona facility. Our facilities are contracted out. The ones here is with Keolis, our partner today at the Pomona facility, and then Arcadia is operated by a company called Transdev. So everyone here has a welcome gift. It's one of our double-deck buses. It was actually the first all-electric double-deck bus in North America. We have two of those. Those are operated out of the Arcadia facility, and they operate on our Silver Streak line, which goes from Montclair to downtown LA. And then hopefully you can stick around after the presentations for the tour. We do have our hydrogen fuel cell buses that we'll take a tour on, and we have 33 of those right now, and we are in the process of ordering more, as well as more double-deck buses. So looking to expand our fleet. And so welcome to Pomona.
Now I'd like to welcome up a great supporter of the dialogues, and really been a partner, also a mentor, HNTB, and we have a new face from HNTB today. Please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bassem Muallim. So I am currently with HNTB. And before I go into HNTB and what we do at HNTB, so I worked for this lady right here when I was with Rail Pros, working on the Redlands Passenger Rail. I worked for Parsons. I worked for WSP. Currently, I'm with HNTB. So when I was asked, are you familiar with the Leonard Transportation? I said, what do you mean, am I familiar? I was on their board for a few years. So one of the things that you do as a director of Caltrans, and I was a director of Caltrans, I ended up my career as a director of Caltrans, is to be able to network with the community. Transportation is very critical, and that's where I saw a lot of value with the Leonard Transportation Center. And looking at the congestion on the I-15, University Avenue, Cal State San Bernardino, but then looking at the big picture, how can we, Caltrans, assist you guys getting grants? What is it that we can do to assist the center? I think it's a great center. I've been there numerous times, and so I'm very, very excited to be here. A little bit about HNTB. We are a big firm, so this is my fourth stop now. As far as in consulting, I've been consulting for almost 10 years. They do a bit of everything, so they're really known. They do planning, airports, rail, construction management, project management, all the biggest projects in the East, and here bridges. We're very well known for that. So I'm very excited to be here, and I look forward to completely partnering with you on this.
It's great. Thank you so much. I'd like to also thank, as we've noted, HNTB is a great sponsor, partner, and mentor, really. So they do more than just sponsor our program, but they really provide a lot of input and assistance, which is greatly appreciated. I'd also like to note our other platinum sponsors, the Ontario International Airport down the street, and the San Bernardino International Airport, who have been great supporters of this program. Our gold sponsors are Omnitrans, SoCalGas, the U.S. National Science Foundation, and Woodruff and Smart. Our silver sponsors are EXP, Foothill Transit,
Global Leadership Alliance, Lane, MetroLink, SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, Sirusa Engineering, and Theodora Onigar law firm. So it's great to have all of these, again, supporters, and we appreciate all of them for their belief and their work with us. Okay, from here, I'd like to start off. These are dialogues, so our expectation is that people will engage. We don't want to have just a bunch of talking heads out there and experts, but we want individuals to really be part of the conversation. So just to get us thinking and starting us off, we have a poll that you can go on. If you're online, you can click in, and if you're here in the room. And so it's, again, they're questions, they're not scientific, they're just to get folks to start thinking about the issues. And one of the issues is the hydrogen distribution infrastructure is fully developed. Pretty sure. Yes, no, unsure. I know what I would answer. All right, there we go. 100% no. I knew that. I was worried. I thought we might get some unsures, but yeah, the hydrogen distribution infrastructure is just beginning to get developed, and there's a number of projects out there, and we'll see how our region and the Southern California area works with that. Oh, we have a yes. Okay, so from there, I'd like to welcome our first speaker. She is online. She'll be up on our screen, and that's Edith Moreno from SoCalGas. And if we could bring her up, she's going to speak about advancing California's clean energy transportation.
I am really sorry I'm not was not able to join you all this morning. There was a little bit of a scheduling conflict, but I'm really bummed to be missing out the tour of the hydrogen buses. And so I'm a huge believer of just kind of the hydrogen fuel cell technology and its applications in the heavy duty sector. And I actually drive a Nexo myself, which is one of the first H2 fuel cell SUV. But again, I'm Edith Moreno. I'm happy to be here with you all, and I support kind of on a high level strategic stakeholder engagement for the gas company, and specifically my efforts has been focused on the clean fuel space and more so in Angeles Lincoln. So I'm here to talk to you. I'm here to talk to you all a little bit about what SoCalGas is doing in this space. I know I only have a quick 15 minutes, but we can wait for the Q&A at the end. I'll just do a quick overview on just SoCalGas if folks are not a customer of ours. But we've been in the game of delivering energy to millions of Southern Californians for over 150 years. We are actually the largest natural gas distribution utility in the country, right? We cover about 24,000 square miles of terrain. So it's almost half of California. You'll see that kind of little thumbnail icon here. But again, I'm just kind of happy to be here today to just kind of describe, SoCalGas's role in the clean energy transition. So next slide, please. I won't go into the nitty gritty of each of these bills, but all I will say is, we live in a state that has very aggressive climate goals and very aggressive clean energy targets. And it's really great that we live in a state that takes climate change seriously and that we are a leader in setting very ambitious goals that will not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but would also reduce criteria air pollutants, right? But if we can just go on to the next slide, I'll just go ahead and jump in here. But I think what's happening now is, right, we've adopted all of these very great aggressive clean energy targets. There's a huge push for decarbonizing our economy. But how we're going to get there, or how we're going to, decarbonize our economy, will require essentially a strategy where we have a broad portfolio of energy sources, including clean fuels. I think the reality is that battery electric technology is really great, and it works for end use applications where it works and where it kind of makes sense from a cost effective standpoint. But the reality is that not everything will be able to be fully electrified, and we will still need clean fuel specifically to power our economy, whether that's aviation, right, port complexes, the heavy duty, sector, the mobility sector, heavy industry, and even power generation, right? Today, we have abundant renewable resources, but at night, what is powering and our economy and keeping the lights on is natural gas. And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to have clean fuels like hydrogen that have scaled up and readily deployed to support all of these sectors. And I think, I've been working in the hydrogen space for about several years now, probably five years or so. And it was really great to see that the Department of Energy, right, at the federal level, is really taking a look and paying attention to the role that clean fuels and specifically hydrogen would play in facilitating the development of not only decarbonizing California, but decarbonizing the country. And so if folks are not aware of this, the federal government is investing about $7 billion in developing hydrogen hubs. And then also there was some money that was set aside as well for carbon management solutions. So think of carbon capture or direct air capture technologies. And California actually was one of those hubs. So we are slated to receive about $1.2 billion in federal funding to facilitate the development of hydrogen hubs in California, which I think just speaks volume to the amount of policy support there is, right, and the amount of momentum. And I'm really hoping that we can continue to ride, this wave of, the support that we have for advancing the clean fuels technology. Okay, so what is SoCalGas' role in developing this? I know some people, earlier, I'm glad that we had that poll, that asked the audience whether we think that our hydrogen distribution network is fully developed. And unfortunately, it's not. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why hydrogen today is super expensive, largely because it gets trucked to those fueling stations, it gets produced and then gets trucked. But, the most cost-effective way to transport hydrogen is via a dedicated hydrogen pipeline. And so that is what SoCalGas is actively investing and studying today. And so we have a proposal to build what would be hopefully the largest clean renewable hydrogen pipeline system that would deliver reliable hydrogen to, the LA basin to power, right, the ports, to support the heavy duty transportation sector. And it could also, and with, providing that fuel to power these sectors of the economy, we could hopefully see a significant improvement in air quality and reduce our GHG emissions from the hard to electrify sectors in the LA region. So where SoCalGas is with this project is we're about 1.5 years into what we are calling phase 1. So it's about 16 feasibility studies that SoCalGas has executed, ranging from a number of things like, where is that hydrogen would be produced? Who would be the off takers? What's the cost effectiveness of hydrogen, right? Does it make sense to build out a dedicated hydrogen delivery infrastructure system? Or is it more cost effective to potentially pursue other technologies like maybe full electrification? And so like I mentioned, we're about 1.5 years into the process since the commission authorized SoCalGas to proceed with this work. So we're expecting to complete this first phase of Angeles Link, and all of these feasibility studies will be available to the public by the end of the year. So it's a really exciting time for the gas company, and it's really great that we have received authorization from the commission to proceed with this work. Which again, just speaks volumes to just the support that we have in California to figure out whether we'll be able to make the facilitation of the development of a hydrogen economy in California work. So next slide. So I talked about, I guess I started with the future with Angeles Link, but I wanted to highlight quickly what SoCalGas is actively doing today in terms of a tangible project with hydrogen. So we have built what we're calling the Hydrogen Innovation Experience at our Energy Resource Center in Downey. If folks have not had the opportunity to visit our hydrogen home and our hydrogen microgrid, please feel free to reach out to me and we can facilitate a tour of our hydrogen home. But essentially what it is, it's a showcase of how both the gas, as in hydrogen, and the electric and the renewables just kind of all come together to work and power. Essentially, it's a small scale microgrid demonstration project that we have connected to a home. So we have solar panels on site that power the electrolyzer. That electrolyzer produces hydrogen on site. It is stored. The hydrogen is used to power the fuel cell. It's also used to blend. So we take a certain, I think anywhere up, actually it's at 20% blend of hydrogen that is blended into the natural gas distribution system that is connected to the home, and that powers it powers essentially all of the natural gas appliances with no modifications today. And so again, it's just off the shelf technology, and it's really great to see that, you know, we're able to demonstrate this to the public, right? Because I think there's a lot of certainty with just hydrogen. You know, what is it? But I think a lot of folks don't realize is that, you know, hydrogen is widely used today. There's about 1,600 miles of dedicated hydrogen pipeline. Right. I think today it's largely used in petrochemical applications and even some steel and other heavy duty industrial applications like the production of ammonia. But I think having folks visit the Hydrogen Innovation Experience just really helps folks understand what even an electrolyzer is. And you'll see it all come together to power this home. And we have a really great setup inside the home that is very interactive and very educational. So I know I just mentioned the home, and that's very much just a test demonstration kind of pilot that we've set up. But, you know, right now we're in the process of hopefully bringing this hydrogen blending project into the real world environment. And so at the direction of the commission, we were required to join our other utilities, including Pacific Gas and Electric, San Diego Gas and Electric, and Southwest Gas, to propose demonstration pilot projects to collect the real world data that we need to blend, you know, to develop a hydrogen blending injection standard. I think a lot of research today shows that, you know, we're pretty safe to blend hydrogen at low levels, but as a prudent operator of the gas system, right, we want to make sure that we collect actual data. And so what we proposed with the commission are two projects, one with the city of Orange Cove, which is kind of located in the northernmost part of our service territory. And so we have an isolated system there that we've identified. And then we also have a project at UC Irvine that will be serve their recreation center. And UC Irvine is actually a really great leader in the hydrogen space. And so we're excited to partner with them and collect additional data and work alongside them to hopefully to you know, get the data that we need to eventually inform the development of an injection standard. So again, this is just an application that we submitted to the commission just earlier this year. We're hopefully expecting to have approval from the commission by early next year, and hopefully we can hit the ground running on these projects and do live demonstrations to eventually inform the development of an injection standard. And last thing I want to note is why we need an injection standard today is, right, we want to be able, you know, we want to be able to have a place where we can put the hydrogen that is being produced in our state. Like, again, it's currently only trucked in California to the, you know, to the hydrogen end users, specifically the hydrogen fueling stations. And as over time, right, we'll be able to build out dedicated hydrogen infrastructure. But in the meantime, right, hopefully we'll be able to inject the hydrogen that is produced into the system, the existing system today. So we have a place, you know, to put it in and continue to support that scale up of hydrogen. I mentioned we've been in the energy delivery space for over 150 years, and you know, SoCal Gas does have a really great workforce to leverage. Right, our bread and butter is pipelines today, and so the only difference of what would change in how we operate is instead of delivering natural gas today, hopefully we'll be delivering hydrogen to our customers in the future. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Edith. That was great. We can take some questions if anybody has any questions right now for Edith. We have one question from the audience.
Yes, very interesting project. In your overview of the project components, I saw one component is separating the hydrogen and the gas. They're doing the reverse as blending. I'm just curious what that component is for.
Was the question, sorry, I can't hear very well from the audience. So was the question, is blending the injecting the hydrogen into the pipeline, it's a blend, and then downstream eventually pulling the hydrogen from the natural gas? Was that the question?
Yes. So in your overview, there is one component that you are doing the separation of the blended gas back to the hydrogen and gas. I'm just kind of curious what that component is for and why you have that part.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry if I might have misspoke if it wasn't clear, but right now there's no proposal to, as part of our hydrogen blending projects, we are not planning to separate the hydrogen. I think what I was trying to say is, blending is a way to not only lower the kind of carbon footprint of the fuel that SoCal Gas delivers today, but it's also a place where hydrogen producers can put the hydrogen while we work on dedicated hydrogen infrastructure. I know there are some end users who might look at hydrogen separation technologies, right? If they only want pure hydrogen, that is, if they are not near the infrastructure or not near a production area. But I just want to clarify, and again, I apologize if I misspoke, but we're not proposing hydrogen separation as part of that pilot project.
So then I think the question would be are the natural gas, if it's in residential, are natural gas our appliances going to be able to run with the hydrogen mix?
Yes. So yes. And so right now it's shown. So we actually have we've been testing at our own laboratories in it's called an engineering analysis center or engineering center, and that's in Pico. And so we've been able to demonstrate there that our appliances work up to with 30% blend, but the home that we have in Downey is operating at 20%. So the tankless water heater that we installed in the home is what you would get at Home Depot or any other hardware store where you would buy your appliance. And so that's working with no modification. Same thing with the stove on site. Same thing with I think we have an outdoor fireplace and an outdoor gas barbecue as well. So no modifications to the equipment would be required with up to 20% blend.
All right. That's great. All right, then we're going to get on to our next poll question so we can bring up our next speaker. Our next question is hydrogen is as safe as any other transportation fuel energy source? Yes, no, unsure. This is a question many people ask. How safe is hydrogen? And hopefully everyone has the vision that it's going to be driving down the road and your car is going to blow up. We know that's not true. And our next speaker has the expertise to tell us all about that. All right, few unsure, but most people think it's just as safe as everyone else, which is good. With that, I'd like to bring up our next speaker who's actually in the room.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Alejandra Vermaza, and I am working as an assistant professor at Cal Poly Pomona. So I'd like to start off by talking about hydrogen leakage, my past work and my future work. And to address the poll question earlier, because I feel like I get that question a lot, is hydrogen actually safe? And I understand the uncertainty that some people might have because it's unfamiliar and it has there's been myths about it that have been proliferated throughout society, but I like to remind people that we are constantly surrounded by fuel infrastructure that we cannot see. It's usually in our homes. We also use devices like our phones that have explosive parts and we don't really think of them as being dangerous. The advantage about, like, there was the incident with Samsung in like 2016 and like you couldn't even take it to the airport. And the other concern or the other advantage about hydrogen too is that because it's so much lighter than air, if there is a leak, it's going to disperse much more quickly than like a liquid fuel at the gas station where it can pool, and because it pools, that poses a high risk of combustion. So my opinion is that hydrogen can be safe with the right measures. Okay, so, but a big concern is leaks, right? Because hydrogen, it's very small. And so there are concerns about it leaking from our natural gas system. So this was the bulk of my master's work in like 2017. And we really wanted to understand how existing natural gas infrastructure would perform when full of hydrogen. So what are some of the potential blends, right? So as you can see here, we have all of this infrastructure. We were really focusing on after the meter infrastructure. So low pressure, what you might find in a residential setting or a business with gas powered appliances with a lot of joints and fittings. And so in the literature, NRAL, the Gas Technology Institute, everyone agrees that hydrogen has these properties that suggest it should leak much, much faster. But this is based upon the assumption that we're looking at flows through typical channels, right? If we have just a very large pipe here, if we're flowing hydrogen, hydrogen should flow much, much faster than methane because it's so much more like it has qualities that make it much more mobile. And if we look at these different flow regimes, and different ways of modeling different types of flows, it should leak anywhere from like 1.3 to 3 times faster. But until we actually test this, we don't really know if this is true, because what I often tell students in my class, especially, and I think in any kind of setting, a lot of the way we use physics and science to understand the world, it's just a model of real systems. So we have to make really significant simplifications to be able to come up with reasonable analyses. And sometimes the assumptions that we make, they don't apply, which means our models are invalid. And so we wanted to understand this experimentally to really see if this is true. This was over at UC Irvine. So we separated a section of the natural gas system, as you can see here highlighted in yellow, with various different properties. This had been used previously for combustion types of experiments where they, in fact, were looking at natural gas hydrogen blends. And so the literature just suggests that up to about 20 to, I've seen like 10 to 20%, you can use existing natural gas appliances with hydrogen mixtures. So also I'll note here that natural gas combustion sensors at this time did not detect any amount of gaseous fuel leakage. Okay, so these were the results. So you can see along the y-axis, it's the pressure, and then along the x-axis, it's the time. And we tested natural gas. We tested a blend of 10% hydrogen, 90% natural gas by volume, and then only hydrogen. And you can see that well, first of all, our system was leaking, right? Because if our system wasn't leaking, the natural gas system, the natural gas pressure should have been the same over the course of the week. So one, this is indicative, okay, the system is leaking. We don't detect it via olfactory sense, like we don't smell the sulfur in the gas, but also our systems aren't detecting this. So this led, okay, likely in the discrepancy between the methane budget, between what's like in the atmosphere versus how much we measure, there's probably a lot of these small leaks that are happening, and methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So that's kind of a bad sign. And then second, both the full hydrogen blend and the 10% hydrogen, they show the same initial and final, obviously the same initial, but the same final pressure. The rate of leakage is the same for the 3 blends. And we tested this over and over with various different types of equipment because this didn't line up with what was in the literature. And then when we looked more closely at where the leaks were happening, we realized that they were happening at the joints, right? So at the elbows, at the T connections, if there were any caps or any kinds of like valves, it was happening in those areas. So then we actually spoke with some people from SoCalGas that were running experiments on 5% hydrogen blends, and they also found very similar behavior where the 5% blend was showing the same rate of leakage as just the pure natural gas blend, which I think I need to update some of these labels. Yeah, so we went back into the literature and we found that there was a seminal paper by I think they're related, these two brothers, Swain and Swain, that was published in 1992. So a long, long time ago. And they used fittings that were given to them by a gas company because those fittings were faulty. And so they were just kind of like donated to do some of these assessments on how different blends of hydrogen, methane, and propane would leak. And their findings, surprisingly, suggested very similar findings to our own. So this is one leak, a second leak, 3, and then 4. So you can see that methane, hydrogen, and propane, they all show the same behavior between, if you look at the pressure versus the flow rate. So for the same pressure, the flow rate is the same. But classical thermodynamics, classical fluid mechanics suggests that should not be the case. We should see something more like this, where there's a deviation. And they attribute this to entrance effects. So they say it's happening because the flow is not fully developed, and therefore the assumptions break down. And so we wanted to test this ourselves to see if actually lowering that entrance length would impact the flow rate. But if anything, we found that it actually makes it worse. If we make the length of the tube very, very small, the difference in leakage is significant and even greater than what these models would suggest. So it was definitely not these entrance effects. Yeah, so we went back to look at, okay, what is actually happening? We know that the leaks are happening in these areas where the joints are. So what about these joints and these faulty fittings makes it so that we can't approximate the flow as though it's a perfect channel? And we started to realize, okay, classical fluid mechanics assumes that the flow is steady, that it would fall under these flow regimes that are pretty ideal, like laminar flow, that we can ignore density fluctuations, that we can ignore any changes in viscosity, and also we can ignore that the behavior of the molecules at the wall boundary. But when you look at this more closely, if you think about a leak is happening at the boundary of the wall. It's not like the molecules, there's some kind of interaction between the free molecules that are flowing and the edges of that pipe, right? So that's an assumption that becomes quite significant. And if one of the key assumptions too in these macroscopic big flows is that you ignore that the flow is made up of actual small particles. But really, when a leak happens, it's not that your entire gas leaks all at once, right? You have like tiny molecules that find their way and they separate from the bulk gas and enter that wall, that little crack in the wall, right? So suddenly the molecular nature becomes very, very important. Yeah, so we were able to, taking those ideas, especially about the importance of the molecular nature and this deviation from these perfect conditions at equilibrium, we were able to replicate these findings or these results. So you can see pressure versus flow rate for natural gas and hydrogen using a capillary tube. The capillary tube is actually something that's typically used in gas chromatography to measure concentrations of various different types of gases. But the reason for why it was a successful replication is because it closely resembles the tortuous leak path that occurs in a leak with significant wall interactions between the molecules escaping and flowing through that crack. So this suggests that the leaks can't be represented as a smooth channel where we have flow through a pipe. Rather, we have to account for the deviation from equilibrium and the significant interactions with the wall boundaries. And so we proposed the two-step mechanism. So the first step is that you have molecules freely moving around, right? Like the air in this room, it's just kind of moving and bouncing everywhere. So first of all, these molecules have to enter the leak crack. And so that's step one. And so it might be hydrogen is like still more mobile, right? So it could be hydrogen is entering and leaving, but it's entering and leaving at a much faster rate. But the net effect is still going to be the same. Okay, and then once the molecules enter, then they enter the very tortuous path, right? And these connections, the mated connections, they're not perfect, right? Sometimes there's edges, like roughness in the edges, which is what causes the leak to happen in the first place. And there isn't always perfect alignment. So you have a path that has a lot of changes in the diameter. And that means that you have differences in density that suddenly become important, and also differences then in, suddenly the molecular interactions with the wall boundaries become very significant. And that instead of the particle, that for this step 2, it's that the pressure is what's driving the leak rate. And so that is why this is our hypothesis for why methane and hydrogen leak at the same rate under these kinds of conditions. And so these were some of the conclusions. So that hydrogen and methane may leak at the same rate from low pressure natural gas infrastructure. Hydrogen doesn't preferentially leak. So it's not that the hydrogen will, if we have a blend, the hydrogen will not, if we have a blend that's mixed, the hydrogen won't leak faster than the methane. Typical leaks cannot be modeled in macroscopic continuous flows. We propose a 2-step mechanism. And then finally, odorants and natural gas, they're not sufficient to detect small leaks. And not that these leaks, I think, really pose a danger to us in terms of like a potential ignition, but more that there's a lot of like gas that we might just be leaking without even noticing and not really accounting for. And so there's a paper that I published on this. Cal Poly Pomona, I'm planning to continue with this work by assessing the leakage rate of various different types of materials, right? Because we only looked at low pressure infrastructure, but there's the distribution and also the transmission system, and there's plastic pipes that are used mainly for hydrogen. More work on examining the fundamentals, like mechanisms of leakage, as well as looking at, because there's this idea that we can use underground storage for storing hydrogen, but how can we better understand that, and what could be the potential leakage that could happen? And the other reason for why this is really important is because there's a lot of concern on hydrogen can be kind of a controversial fuel right now. And in the atmospheric science community, there's a big concern about the short-term climate impacts of hydrogen. But because we don't have quantitative evidence that actually understands how much hydrogen could potentially leak from the system, these models are only as accurate as the assumptions that they are based on. And without having assumptions that are based on actual science, it really makes these models, I don't think, as strong as they could be, right? So I think there's really an opportunity to reconcile some of these tensions around hydrogen. And I think also we can leverage these findings to address some of the misconceptions surrounding hydrogen that exists today. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Just curious, when you say there is this leakage, so is it just when you go through a different topography, different alignment, going straight versus bend, you have a bend in the areas like that leakage? Is that consistent with just the hydrogen? How about the blended, and how about the methane? If you put that methane, for example, and you have a change, like an angle, does it leak, or it just only happens mostly when you're putting, so far from what you've seen, only when you put hydrogen or even blended?
Yeah, so for all 3 gases, they're all leaking from the same fittings.
Or all of them?
All of them, and they all show that they're leaking the same. There's no difference in their behavior between the hydrogen, the blend, and the natural gas.
They're bleeding at the same rate.
At the same rate from the same places. Yes.
Heard you say that you're going to be doing some additional studies on different materials for either containment or transmitting hydrogen. Are you familiar with any new materials right now that are maybe stronger than what they use right now for example, the Class 8 trucks? They have this really huge and heavy containers so that they can maintain the pressure necessary to economically be able to transfer and utilize the hydrogen.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not familiar with storage materials, right? Because in a truck, that's more storage. I'm more familiar with materials used in pipes. And I know that for hydrogen, typically plastic pipes are what are preferred in industry.
Transmitting.
Yeah, transmission. Yes.
That's looking at vibration in the pipe and how that affects.
No, but that's a great test to look. That's a great idea.
So the question was a leakage between when the filling,
Filling it.
when you're filling the, yeah.
The dispenser.
Yeah, I don't know the mechanism. So I can't answer that truthfully.
So, okay, my question is, so how much can the problem reduce the effectiveness of the buds that we're going to be looking at? Or like, what kind of strategies can we, or are implemented in the buds that we're going to look at for this type of?
So the hydrogen is just like any other, it's any other fuel source. It goes into, and so it's probably similar, you know, they have a special nozzle, right? So that we can look at it so that you don't have the release, but there's release when you go to the gas station, right? There's releases from the nozzle. So, you know, you'd have to see what the nozzle and what the protections are within the nozzle. And then it goes generally into a fuel cell, right? So it's powered differently. The engines work differently.
Is your question about like the problem of leakage and how this could impact the deployment of hydrogen? Is that okay? Yeah, so so that's a really good question, right? From an economic, okay, so hydrogen today is really, really expensive. And the Biden-Harris administration, they've set this a hydrogen earth shot. The last time they had an earth shot was to get to the moon in like I forget exactly the numbers for the moon, but for hydrogen, it's to bring it down to $1 per kilogram in like 1 decade. And I'm forgetting what the third one is. 111. I'm blanking. But so today, hydrogen is significantly more expensive than methane and than any fossil fuels. And part of that is because the equipment that we have to make hydrogen renewably, which are called electrolyzers, and they just split water into hydrogen and oxygen, that is still, it's at a high technology readiness level, but it's just expensive today, and it's barely entering the market. There is funding going into this through the Inflation Reduction Act to bring it down. So to answer your question, from an economic perspective, leaking hydrogen is not very good for these developers, especially today where hydrogen is so expensive, right? And in the future, it still won't be. I think even like 10% might be quite significant, right? Because every time that there's hydrogen being leaked, it's money being wasted because it costs money to make that hydrogen, right? So like from a financial standpoint, it's not very good. And then also from an efficiency standpoint, because if you're using the fuel in your car, obviously if you're leaking some of it, you're going to get less range.
The question is, yeah, if there's a cost to the blend or if it's the same price coming across to the consumer. Because the hydrogen's more expensive than the natural gas. So what is the cost changing?
Yes, that's a really good question. So what we have in Downey is just a SoCalGas facility, right? So right now there's no cost to anyone aside from just SoCalGas of operating that. And what if we ultimately get approved for the pilot project, and if ultimately we develop a hydrogen blending injection standard that the state needs to adopt, the pricing, we'd still have to determine that because it's going to be very much dependent on how much hydrogen production we have online, and how many customers are going to be receiving the blend, if that makes sense. I'm sorry I can't give you any specifics, but today, right, we're just pulling natural gas from SoCalGas's system. We're producing that hydrogen on site. And so the costs there are essentially what the water costs that we get from the city of Downey, right? And then just kind of SoCalGas's operation and maintenance costs for that setup. But ultimately, in a future where hopefully we'll be delivering hydrogen blended fuels to our customers, there's still a lot of uncertainty on what that rate impact would be. But that's a really good question. It'll be still several years out until, right, we get information from the pilot program. We then go back to the state of California or the Public Utilities Commission specifically with our proposal of a statewide hydrogen blending injection standard. And then in that process, which I would say my just best estimate is maybe in 5 years or so, in that time frame, we would be going through the tariff changes and the rate changes associated with the hydrogen blend into the system. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And I guess just what is the price differential right now between hydrogen and natural gas?
Oh my gosh, so it's $36 a kilogram today at the pump. And then the
Natural gases is 36.
Yeah, so 36 of hydrogen a kilogram.
Okay.
And then I have not checked our rates, but we bill by the therm, and I'd have to get back to you.
So
Depends
Todd Warden says it's about $2.
Depends on the yard. Riverside City's about 25. Most natural gas stations are about $2 a gallon.
Oh, you're talking about natural gas fueling station, not what goes to the customers. Yeah, so it's 36. And then the CNG stations, it depends because SoCalGas owns and operates natural gas or CNG fueling stations, and it's a lot lower, but it depends on where you are.
All right, so right now we're at $36 versus
Like
$2.
$2, correct.
Okay, great. So we'll talk about that. We're gonna close out this portion of the dialogue. Thanks so much to both of our speakers. I'd like to just give them another round. And now, for those of us who are on site, we're gonna go get on the hydrogen bus. And we're gonna go around the yard a bit and see the facilities here to understand. Foothill Transit is one of the few, there's the Downey, of course, but that's LA County. And this is almost San Bernardino County, but it's Foothill Transit is one of the few hydrogen facilities within our region. So it's going to be a good chance to see it.
And they are pioneers in clean transportation.
Pioneers of clean transportation. Dorn Barnes, unfortunately, who was not able to be here, has really been at the forefront of transportation. We have a survey for you. If you can online, answer the survey. Again, this is our first kind of going out and taking the dialogues on the road. So we'd like to get feedback from you about that as we move forward. And thank you all, for those of you online, for coming. And for those of you who are here, let's go outside and do our tour.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the tour, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.